Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. Let us take a little walk down the proverbial rabbit hole of one of the most unexplainable occurrences of the 18th century. A change in the way that humanity treated those who had passed, and a shifting in the overall structure of cities, towns, and society, which appeared to originate in the heart of fledgling America. The fragility within the narrative comes to us by the way of Yale University, and this all ties back to the very foundations of some of North America's most prestigious Ivy League schools. What we will look at today are some of the earliest photographs that I could find of Yale University. What really stands out about these images is, first of all, most of the photographs from the 1860s, 1870s, they're all from outside of the campus or outside of the university grounds. And the grounds themselves are protected by fortified walls and gateways. Really, it appears to be a fortified structure. It looks a lot more like a defensive structure than a university. Now, when we come to the time of the majority of the photographs we are looking at today, the 1890s, and right around the year 1900, we begin to see that the university has been transformed. And this goes hand in hand with the changing of the guard that occurred at Yale University in roughly 1887. Something else that I wanted to mention before we dive deep into the current narrative about Yale University and the Grove Street Cemetery is that the namesake of Yale will come up in this video. And this is a man with a history that is anything but concise, or one that's conducive to us understanding who he is. Because throughout different narratives, we have theories about this man. Some say that he was of one faith. Some say he was of another. Yale University, as it was named the Collegiate College, was founded to be able to produce ministers for the New World. It was a theological college. So that also should be in mind as we get into this narrative. But within that, we're also told that the Collegiate College was also important to producing masons for the New World, for the architects that were needed to found all of the structures that would come after. So again, many of the architects of the New World, the ones that are given credit for these massive buildings, were produced by these Ivy League schools. The Ivy League schools themselves being tied to founders and namesakes that have a rather nefarious or questionable history. Our story commences in the 17th century, when English settlers began to establish fortified towns in the region that aptly became known as New England. One of the most hardy of these early settlements was New Haven, Connecticut, which is considered one of the first planned cities in North America, being officially founded in 1638 using a grid layout system to shape the city. Right off the bat, we begin to see just how intertwined the government, church, and masonry really was during this time period. We're told the Collegiate College in New Haven was required due to the colony of Connecticut needing ministers to serve the people and masons to construct the new architecture. And the General Court of Connecticut passed the charter to found the college on October 9th, 1701. We're then told a group of the New World's elite met under command of Samuel Russell to decide which books would be donated to form the basis for the college. This group of 10 men, all congressional ministers, are now known as the Founders, a rather fitting name given what we know about the history of America. However, the Collegiate College didn't initially begin in New Haven. As the school developed, the classes were first conducted out of the basement of the school's first rector, Abraham Pearson. Yet we're also told, in no short detail, that we have magnificent brick and masonry buildings being founded across America during this time, and the Collegiate College was quite literally chartered by Connecticut, meaning significant funds would have been allocated. And yet we're told the college originally operated out of one man's house? Is that not a little bit fishy? The first treasurer of the Collegiate College, of course, happened to be the one to donate the land that the university now sits on today. His name was Nathaniel Lind, and this donated property was said to have already contained a massive building, which thenceforth became the home of the Collegiate College. That's when we have yet another name thrown into this narrative that just adds more fuel to the confusing nature of what we are told. Increase Mather, yes, that's his real name, was the sixth official president of Harvard University. By 1717, he felt Harvard had become too liberal and wanted to turn his attention to the fledgling Collegiate College and its massive new location. Increase Mather publicly and privately championed the Collegiate College in New Haven, helping to increase its size and reputation. Again, all of this narrative seems so concise, yet there is almost no conflict described in any of this. By 1718, Cotton Mather, son of Increase, at the behest of Connecticut Governor Gordon Saltonstall, contacted massively rich merchant Elihu Yale. Yale had made his fortune with the East India Company, at one point being in sole possession of Fort St. George, a fortress city on the coast of India that was formerly known as Whitetown. This was the first British fortress ever established in India and spearheaded a centuries-long conflict in that region. Yale was formally convicted of self-dealing by the East India Company, essentially stealing money from the company and funneling it back into his own businesses. He paid a massive fine for this, but by that point, he was already one of the richest men in the world. Back in Britain, in 1699, Yale furthered his fortune by becoming a leading diamond and rare art dealer, as well as controlling large portions of the slave trade in India. So I ask again, does this sound like someone who should have one of the most prestigious schools of all time named after him? What's the old adage? Money talks? We're told after being contacted by the Collegiate College and seeing an opportunity to strengthen his fortune and legacy, Yale donated over 400 books, which became the curriculum for the college. He also donated bales of goods to be resold for profit, and for unknown reasons, most likely financially, this prompted the college to officially rename itself as Yale. Further adding to this mystery, we're also told Yale is the anglicized spelling of not an old Hebrew name, but rather an old Welsh name that's often been tied to early Welsh myths and sagas. Seemingly showcasing how interconnected Harvard and Yale were, we're also told that a majority of the earliest books in Yale, besides those that were donated by Yale, came from Britain through Harvard graduates. We're told by the 1750s, Yale was swept up into the intellectual movement. However, defining what that means to this particular pillar of education becomes a bit more difficult. Again, take it all with a grain of salt, but by the mid-1750s, the scholars of the New World started a movement which began to push Hebrew as an important classical language, alongside the likes of Greek and Latin, and this was required to be studied by all students at Yale. We're told this idea was further made permanent by Reverend Stiles, president of Yale from 1778 through 1795, who came into power just as America was founded. We're told Stiles had graduated from Yale in 1746, and upon becoming president, he changed the seal of the college to include the Hebrew phrase Urim and Thummim. Don't know if I pronounced that right. The next question that I would raise becomes, what exactly was happening behind closed doors at Yale? As it was the only college in all of Connecticut from its founding in 1701 through 1823, Yale was said to be a melting pot of the New World's elite. While we're told Harvard was known for its stability and its maturity, on the contrary, Yale was known for new cutting-edge theology and its youth. Adding further to this, and what may be seen as one of the few hardships of this Ivy League school, we're told by 1828, society began a cultural shift which saw the teachings of Yale challenged by intellectuals in America. Unlike higher education throughout Europe, which had an established curriculum that included both math and science, many schools in America, including Yale, focused almost exclusively on theology and the ancient languages of Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. These languages, and their forced learning to receive a degree, became a point of contention, as many argued the curriculum in America lacked the teachings that would fill the demand for new innovations. While the public demanded a better education for their youth, Yale published the Yale Report of 1828, essentially refusing to change the curriculum. The professors and ministers of Yale concentrated on developing a person possessed of religious values strong enough to sufficiently resist the temptations of Victorian life, according to official literature. Yet, even into the 1870s, Yale continued to catch backlash from industrialists who claimed the education that was received at Yale and other Ivy League schools offered very little in the way of practical teachings that would benefit someone in everyday life. Under Yale President Noah Porter, from 1871 through 1886, Yale faced its harshest criticisms, which in return caused the university to double down on refusing to embrace new ideas and new technology. Yet just 1 year after Noah Porter was ousted, the president and fellows of Yale College in New Haven, as it was officially known, became renamed and rebranded as simply Yale University and began to, finally, embrace the Industrial Revolution. Now, bringing this full circle, the Grove Street Cemetery, this eerily ancient-looking burial ground, was founded on the outskirts of and is surrounded by Yale University. Officially founded as the New Haven Burying Ground, it was actually organized the whole way back in 1796 and then incorporated the next year, 1797. My first question becomes, why would a cemetery need to be a corporation? According to the mainstream narrative, the Grove Street Cemetery was the first private, non-profit cemetery in the entire world, and the first to pioneer the idea of having a planned layout, with permanent plots owned by significant families, as well as paved streets, ornamental designs, and a grid-like layout system. Essentially, the cemeteries that we are familiar with today all can be traced back to the Grove Street Cemetery. In itself, that's a very interesting idea, but diving into the history a bit further, and we find even more questions than we have answers. By introducing ideas like permanent memorials and the sanctity of the deceased, the cemetery became a, quote, real turning point, a whole redefinition of how people viewed dying, end quote. And this was according to historian Peter Hall. We're told prior to the establishment of the Grove Street Cemetery, most of those who passed away in and around New Haven were buried on the New Haven Green, which was the town's central open space and also considered to be the churchyard. What's remarkable, and what many in New Haven might not know today, is that the New Haven Green, which is a massive park visited by thousands, was once completely full of thousands of burials. However, from 1794 through 1795, an epidemic of yellow fever swept through New Haven. This prompted Yale graduate and prominent real estate tycoon James Hillhouse, who also was a senator, to band together with the other rich elite of New Haven to form a massive new burying ground on the edge of Yale University. The reasons for choosing this exact location remain unclear, but Hillhouse, along with 32 other families, so a total of 33, what a number, purchased approximately 6 acres of land that was contained within a wooden fence or palisade on the edge of the university. It makes you wonder what actually previously existed here. According to the narrative, New Haven's elite purchased subscriptions to the land as offered by the New Haven Burying Ground Corporation that had been formed in 1797. By the early 1800s, the Grove Street Cemetery had tripled in size to over 18 acres. In the year 1821, the rest of the burials which littered the New Haven Green were unearthed and relocated to the Grove Street Cemetery, as well as dozens of large monuments that also existed on the green. The New Haven Green was then revitalized as a public space. However, many who visit the green today have no idea they are walking on what was once one of the largest burial grounds in America. By 1845, so right around the introduction of photography, we have a multitude of new construction that was said to have occurred in the Grove Street Cemetery, including the founding of the massive Egyptian Revival Gateway entrance. We're told the gateway was carved by Hezekiah Auger, with designs by architect Henry Austin, both of whom are buried within the cemetery. We're told in part due to the Ivy League education and the focus on Hebrew, a multitude of Egyptian revival structures were founded throughout New England. Locations like this, while being considered non-profit, still lined the pockets of those involved. The quote on the Egyptian Revival Gate reads, "The dead shall be raised," which is taken from Corinthians. However, some can see this as a tongue-in-cheek reference to how this cemetery was created, quite literally raising the graves and monuments of thousands of people and relocating them to Grove Street. It's also been noted that in reference to the quote, "The dead shall be raised," Yale president at the time, Arthur Twining Hadley, responded, "They certainly will be, if Yale University needs the property." Alongside the Egyptian Revival Gateway of 1845 came a rather large perimeter wall made out of fine stone architecture, which measures roughly 8 feet tall and was completed in 1848. Finally, seemingly fulfilling the prophecy of Arthur Hadley, in 2008, Yale planned to build 2 new structures for the college just feet outside of the cemetery. The plans would have deconstructed part of the cemetery to open it up for easier access by Yale students. Why this was needed, I do not know. But luckily for all of the history involved, this plan was shelved after a public town hall meeting where Yale sent one of its finest architects, Robert Stern, to try to convince the people of New Haven to destroy part of this historic cemetery. Yale's plan failed. With that, we have the history of the Grove Street Cemetery in New Haven and its ties to Yale University. Obviously, there is so much more we can talk about when diving into the history of Yale University. I didn't even begin to touch on the secret societies, nor did I talk about all of the presidents and the influential people that have come out of Yale University, and I didn't really discuss any of the theories, the myths, and the controversies that are also involved with this university. I will save that for another video if you are interested, but I did want to try to get this concept of the Grove Street Cemetery, this new form of burial ground, out there for you, because apparently this was the first of its kind, and it led to basically all of the modern cemeteries that we have today. So I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section, anything that stood out to you, and we will talk about this more on the next video. Before I chime out, I also wanted to mention I went through these photographs again after recording this audio, looking for any evidence of the supposed architecture, the masonry, the wall that existed around this cemetery that was apparently attached to the Egyptian revival gate. All I could find was this rather simple looking fence. So if anyone has any photographs of this cemetery right after it was renovated in the 1840s, I would love to see those images.